Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The Wrong Flight Home. Jack Reynolds wasn't supposed to be home yet. His C-17 had hit mechanical issues mid-mission, grounding him 2 days early in California. Command offered a hotel, but he waived it. "I've got my own bed waiting," he told them. He didn't text his wife. After 12 years of marriage, he figured a surprise visit might be good. Maybe they'd catch up properly for once. Maybe sleep without the weight of deployments between them. He pulled into the driveway at 9:42 p.m. The porch light was off. Strange, Heather always left it on when he flew. Inside, it was too quiet. Not asleep quiet. Something else. Jack dropped his duffel silently, walking past the hallway photos. Wedding day, Kyle's 5th grade graduation, one of Heather laughing with wine in hand. He paused under that one. For a moment, his gut twisted. Then he heard it. A whisper upstairs. Then a breath. Not Heather's. He climbed the stairs without a sound. Combat boots still on. His bedroom door was slightly cracked. From the hallway, he saw a shape. Two, actually. A man's broad back and Heather's pale legs. He didn't move. He didn't kick the door in. He just stood there. 30 seconds. 40. A minute. Then he stepped back. Quiet as he came. Downstairs, he found it. A second phone. Sloppy. She left it charging on the kitchen counter. He turned it on. No password. The last message on the screen hit him harder than any enemy fire ever had. "I love you too. He'll be gone another week. We're safe." Jack didn't cry. Didn't yell. Didn't break anything. He just turned off the phone, slid it into his jacket, and whispered to the dark. "You think so? Hey, just want to speak from the heart for a second. I've been working really hard on both my channels, writing, editing, everything by myself. And trust me, I'm not a professional. I'm learning as I go. Every story I write, every topic I cover, it all comes from the heart. I'm trying to bring you stories that you might enjoy. But still, there are people who leave hate comments, negative feedback, and that hurts sometimes. I know not every story is for everyone. We all have different tastes. But for those of you who support me, show love, and subscribe, your kindness is what keeps me motivated. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if you're new here, or if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider clicking that button. It really helps me stay inspired and bring you even better, more emotional stories. I've also started a new channel called Betrayal Stories Lab, where I share deeper, more intense stories with powerful endings. The link is in the description, just one click. It would truly mean the world to me. Thanks again for being here. Your support means everything. 2 days passed. Heather never suspected a thing. She greeted Jack with a startled smile the morning after, wrapped herself around him like she missed him. He kissed her forehead. Said nothing. Eric, the man Jack had seen, showed up the next evening, beer in hand, grinning. "Welcome back, Captain," he said, like he hadn't just had his hands on Jack's wife. Jack played it cool, laughed, drank. But that night, he sat on the edge of the bed, watching Heather sleep. Her breathing steady, peaceful. She had no idea the war had already started. The second phone now lived in Jack's flight bag. He'd gone through everything. Texts, pictures, one video. He never watched it twice. The pain wasn't sharp, it was cold. Like a steel plate pressed against his chest. Kyle was the one who cracked the silence. He found Jack in the garage, sitting on the floor, staring at a half-dismantled engine block. "You found out, didn't you?" Kyle asked. Jack blinked. "What?" Kyle leaned against the doorframe. His voice calm. Steady. "About Mom. Eric. I've known since April. That's when the floor truly dropped out." Kyle walked in, sat beside him, and pulled out a USB drive. Screenshots, messages, GPS logs. "I didn't know if I should show you, but now you know." Jack looked at his son. 17. Too sharp for his age. And too damn loyal. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Jack asked. Kyle didn't flinch. "You were at war. I didn't want to ruin your focus. But now, maybe we fight this one together." Jack exhaled. Slow. Heavy. For the first time in days, he felt something other than numbness. "All right," he said. "Let's burn their world down." The plan didn't start with rage. It started with silence. Jack moved like a ghost in his own house. Heather went about her days, yoga, PTA meetings, calls with clients, never once catching the deadness in his eyes. Cal played along too. No outbursts. No cold shoulders. Just quiet, calculated normalcy. By the end of the week, Jack had a spreadsheet. Every time Eric came over. Every suspicious withdrawal from their joint account. Every private message Heather swore didn't exist. Then came the bombshell. Kyle had planted a motion-activated recording app on Heather's MacBook months ago, just in case. And in one of the clips, plain as day, Eric said, "The money's moving through clean channels. She'll never suspect you're laundering anything." Jack froze. Money? Laundering? This wasn't just betrayal. It was something else. Something bigger. Jack looped in an old Air Force buddy, Briggs, now working in cyber investigations. He sent him a flash drive. "No names yet," Jack said on the call. "Just tell me if the data leads somewhere." Dangerous. That night, Jack sat by the fire pit, Kyle beside him. "Think she knows we're on to her?" Kyle asked. Jack shook his head. "She still thinks we're asleep." Kyle watched the flames crackle, then said quietly, "She's not going to get away with it, right?" Jack looked up at the stars, face lit orange by firelight. His voice was low, sure. "No, son. She's going to get exactly what she earned." Friday night. Heather set the table like nothing was wrong. Wine glasses, candlelight, napkins folded just the way Jack liked. It was her "we're a happy couple" routine. Jack let her play her part. But Kyle noticed everything. The small tremor in her hand as she poured the wine. The fake laughter. The eye flicked toward the hallway every time a phone vibrated. Then came the knock. Eric walked in like he owned the place. Button-up shirt, Rolex gleaming, and that phony, "I'm family" grin. "Hope I'm not crashing anything," he said, stepping inside with a bottle of bourbon. Jack smiled. "You always bring good whiskey. Sit." Dinner was an act. Heather did most of the talking, spinning stories about real estate leads and local fundraisers. Jack nodded along, tossing in just enough small talk to sell the scene. Kyle sat quiet, watching them both. He wasn't playing dumb, he was recording again. A small mic taped under the table picked up everything. Eric leaned back with a smirk, sipping his bourbon. "You know, Jack, you're lucky. Some guys come back from deployment to a house full of strangers." Jack tilted his glass, watching the amber swirl. "Yeah, some guys lose everything and don't even know it." Heather laughed too loud. "Oh, stop it. You too." That's when Jack dropped the first seed. "I've been thinking about writing a memoir. All these missions. The classified stuff. Wild stories, you know? Lot of people would pay to read that." Eric froze for half a second. Heather's wine glass clicked against the plate. "Is that even allowed?" Jack smiled coldly. "Depends on what I decide to include." The tension in the room thickened. Kyle caught it. He looked at his father, then down at the hidden recorder. The trap was tightening. Late that night, Kyle opened the hard drive labeled "Physics Homework" and plugged it into his dad's laptop. No physics inside, just digital landmines. "Watch this," Kyle said, clicking a file marked Eric_voice_memo_3.mp4. Jack leaned forward. The audio wasn't clean, but the voice was unmistakable. "She doesn't ask questions. I run it through the firm, she signs the blind trust, and boom, money's clean." Heather's voice came through next, lower. "What about Jack? He's not stupid, Eric. He trusts you. And even if he does sniff something, the second he says the word laundering, we flip it. Say he's losing it." Jack didn't flinch. He hit pause and said, "How many more like that?" Kyle clicked through folders. "I've got 6 voice clips, 3 videos, and a chain of 48 emails. Most are backed up on encrypted cloud drives. We're safe." Jack nodded, exhaling. "This wasn't just an affair," Kyle added. "They were using your deployments to move dirty money. Real estate scams, shell companies. She's deeper than I thought." Jack stood and walked to the garage. When he returned, he was holding an old military-grade burner phone. He handed it to Kyle. "No texting. No calls. Just use this when it's time. And that time's coming fast." Kyle took it without a word. Jack looked at his son. For the first time, he didn't see a teenager, he saw a soldier. Someone who had his back in the one war that mattered now. You still good with this? Jack asked. Kyle nodded. We don't just burn them, we expose everything they built. Jack moved through the house like a stranger now. He barely spoke to Heather, only answered questions with one-word replies. She assumed it was deployment fatigue. He let her believe that. In truth, he was building a war map. On the wall in the garage, under a canvas cover, Jack had sketched a timeline. Arrows connected bank statements, dates of military deployments, and Eric's company expansion spikes. Red tape circled key patterns. Every time Jack flew out, Heather made a large transaction. Every return, the money vanished into consulting fees. One night, Kyle knocked on the garage door. We need another angle, he said. What if we track the payments coming into Eric's company? Jack stepped back from the map. Kyle shrugged. I've got a friend at school. His brother's a crypto freak. Knows how to follow wallets. Jack didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. They worked in silence for hours. Emails were decrypted. Bank logs downloaded. Jack realized something chilling. Eric's company had government contracts. Real ones. Not just fraud. This was embedded corruption. If this went public, it wouldn't just destroy Heather and Eric. It could shake parts of the defense sector. But Jack didn't care. If they used his name, his rank, his absences, they deserved collapse. The final stroke came when Briggs called back. This isn't just some dirty side hustle, Jack. Briggs warned. They're using your identity to access encrypted files. You've been compromised. Jack's eyes didn't move from the timeline. Then it's time we compromise them. He pulled the cover back over the war map and walked inside like nothing had changed. But everything had. Jack didn't sleep much anymore. At 3 a.m., he stood alone in the kitchen, staring out the window, coffee cooling in his hand. The suburban calm outside was a lie, just like the woman sleeping upstairs. Heather had been unusually affectionate the past 2 days. She cooked breakfast, asked about his nightmares from combat, offered long hugs that once felt warm but now made his skin crawl. He didn't pull away. He just let her perform. Kyle watched too. Observed. Not just Heather, but how Jack was changing. You're not the same, Kyle said that afternoon as they worked on the truck. It's not just about her cheating. You're colder. Jack wiped grease from his fingers and met his son's eyes. That's not a bad thing. Cold men don't hesitate. Kyle hesitated. You're not going to do something stupid, are you? Jack tightened a bolt until the metal groaned. No. I'm going to do something permanent. Later that night, Jack received a file from Briggs, unmarked, encrypted, and heavy with consequence. Inside was a list of Eric's transactions, contractor payments, wire transfers to offshore accounts, and links to shell companies that matched Heather's real estate ventures. Jack had names now. Addresses. Timelines. Proof. He clicked through until one folder stopped him cold. It was labeled Warden Black_op. Jack opened it. Dozens of classified briefings. Maps of overseas rates. Coordinates. One file even included names of covert operators. All stolen from missions Jack had flown. Heather hadn't just betrayed him emotionally. She had used his position to access secrets that could get people killed. He closed the laptop and stood there in the dark, jaw locked. Upstairs, Heather was laughing on the phone. Something about a charity event. Jack didn't move. Didn't breathe. She had no idea her countdown had already begun. At 2:12 a.m., Heather stirred and rolled over, reaching for Jack. He was already awake, eyes open, staring at the ceiling like it held the answers he hadn't found in her lies. She rested her head on his chest. I've missed you, she whispered. He said nothing. She ran her fingers down his arm. You've been distant lately. Still silence. Heather propped herself up on her elbow, half her face hidden in shadow. If something's wrong, you can talk to me. Jack finally turned his head. Slowly, calmly. That's funny, he said. I was thinking the same thing. Heather blinked, thrown off by his tone. He kissed her forehead, turned on his side, and closed his eyes. Not because he was tired. He needed her to believe the mask was still on. The next morning, Jack stood by the mirror, tying his uniform collar. Heather walked in behind him, brushing her hair. You're going in early? He nodded. Debrief meeting. She slid her arms around his waist. You're so damn strong. I don't know how you hold it all together. Jack looked at her through the mirror. Discipline. She kissed his shoulder and left the room. Jack reached for his phone. No texts. No calls. But the message had been received. Briggs had sent a single line the night before. They stole intel that could trigger an investigation. You ready to pull the pin? Jack stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, I wanted to hit everyone. Not just them. The whole damn system. He closed the phone and exhaled. His hands weren't shaking. His voice, when he finally spoke aloud, was steady as a blade. Let them sleep. The wake-up's coming. The Reynolds house buzzed with fake harmony. Heather played her part flawlessly. Morning smoothies, casual affection, casual lies. But every movement she made, every word she spoke, felt choreographed. Jack noticed the micro-pauses in her speech when he mentioned work. The way she'd deflect any talk about finances. She was hiding behind her routine. Jack didn't confront her. He confronted Caleb. They met at an old fishing dock miles from base. Neutral ground. Caleb pulled up in a Jeep, shades on, nodding like it was just another Sunday. But Jack's silence unnerved him. You good? Caleb asked. Jack leaned against his truck. You knew? Caleb swallowed. About Heather and Eric? Man, I didn't want to be in the middle of that. Jack's voice was calm, but his eyes cut through him. Middle? You played both sides, Caleb. You let it happen. Caleb shifted. What did you want me to do? They said it was a phase. They told me you were distant. Dealing with stuff overseas. Jack's jaw tightened. So you sold out your friend for gossip. Caleb took a step back. You're making this bigger than it is. Jack pulled a printed photo from his jacket. A wire transfer record to Caleb's business, signed by Eric. Caleb's face drained. That wasn't, it was a loan, man. Just to cover a loss. Right? Jack said, walking past him. Funny how betrayal always sounds like business. He got in the truck without another word. As he drove off, Caleb yelled after him. What are you going to do? You're not thinking straight. But Jack wasn't listening anymore. Because now, it wasn't just personal, it was tactical. And loyalty? That wasn't just a word anymore. It was a line. And everyone who crossed it was on the list. Jack stood at the edge of the woods behind the old Air Force Memorial Chapel, alone, except for Kyle. There was no casket, no preacher, no mourners. Just two folding chairs and a folded flag that Jack laid on the ground between them. Why are we out here? Kyle asked. Jack didn't answer at first. He crouched down and pressed the flag into the earth like it meant something, like it was marking a grave. I needed to bury something, he finally said. Kyle looked confused until Jack spoke again. I'm planning a funeral for the man I was. Jack stood, brushing dirt from his palms. His expression was unreadable, cold, but not numb. Focused. That man trusted his wife. That man believed in honor, in loyalty. That man's dead now. Kyle stayed quiet. He didn't need to say anything. He just nodded and watched his father pick up a black binder from the second chair. Inside it were names, dates, accounts, maps, legal pathways, media contact lists. This is the next war, son, Jack said, and we're fighting it with evidence. They walked back to the truck in silence, but it wasn't empty. The moment was loud with purpose. Jack wasn't burning with revenge anymore. He was building it. Slow, surgical, permanent. And now, it was no longer about just Eric or Heather. It was about every person who let it happen. They met in a parking garage, level 4, beneath a closed-down bank building in Bakersfield. Jack parked with his lights off and waited. Then she stepped out of the shadows. Camila Park, ex-military beat reporter, blacklisted for exposing fraud in a defense contract 3 years ago. You're the source? She asked, sliding into the passenger seat. Jack handed her the drive. Eric Vance, defense contractor, laundered funds through my wife's real estate business. While I was flying combat missions, they used my clearance to access classified intel. Camila didn't blink. She was already scanning the folder structure on the flash drive. Do you have anything that ties this to active government contracts? Jack tapped the steering wheel twice. Section 3. Look at the payments tagged Warden Black _op. She clicked. Then her eyes narrowed. Oh hell, That's procurement data from 3 secure installations. These aren't just shady invoices. This is internal security breach stuff. Jack looked straight ahead. I want the public to see everything. I want this to blow wide open. But I want it done right. No leaks. No rumors. No guessing. Camila shut the laptop and looked at him. You're trying to blow the doors off a classified network. You'll make enemies. They already made me theirs. She studied his face, steady, hardened. Then she nodded slowly. I'll vet it. I'll go dark for 2 weeks. When this hits, you'll feel it shake. Jack didn't say thank you. He just reached for the gear shift. 2 weeks, she repeated as she stepped out. He drove away without looking back. Behind him, the city lights buzzed like static. Ahead of him, the storm was brewing and he was steering straight into it. 3 nights later, Kyle walked into Jack's study with a laptop under his arm. I was going through Mom's cloud backups, he said, carefully. There's a deleted folder she didn't scrub right, buried under a home remodel subfolder. Jack turned away from the war map wall. Show me. Kyle opened the screen and clicked through the folder tree. Inside were screenshots of email exchanges between Heather and someone named Colton Ames, a name Jack recognized. Ames was a senior logistics officer at Dover Air Force Base. Deeply connected. Ruthless. Jack scrolled through the messages. Colton, you're protected as long as he's overseas. Once the files are passed, you and Vance vanish clean. Heather, Jack smart. Too smart. If he starts digging, we blame stress. PTSD. Anything but the truth. Jack read the words again, slower this time. His hand tightened into a fist. They had built a whole plan around his absence, weaponized his silence, his service, his sacrifice. They weren't just cheating, Jack muttered. They were erasing me. Kyle watched him carefully. Dad, you okay? Jack shook his head. No, but I'm ready. He printed out the emails and placed them in the growing binder. Each document was now a piece of ammunition. This isn't just about revenge anymore, Jack said. This is about exposing the people who bet everything on the idea that I'd never come home. He looked up at Kyle. We're not just going to burn them. We're going to make them beg for the match. Kyle nodded, eyes lit with grim fire. The line had been crossed. Now they weren't just pushing back. They were going to bring it all down. The restaurant was upscale, private booths, dim lighting, the kind of place where secrets lived in corners and lies were plated with garnish. Heather walked in wearing red, hair done up, smile like nothing in the world could touch her. Eric was already there, sipping something neat, looking around nervously. He stood when he saw her, tried to kiss her. She turned her cheek instead. You said it was handled, she whispered through her teeth as they Saturday, but there's a reporter digging now. Camila Park. I saw her name on a burner alert. Eric looked like he'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. I didn't leak anything, he muttered. But Jack's not reacting. That's what scares me. He's not yelling. He's not threatening. He's just watching. Heather glanced over her shoulder. You said he was predictable. I said he was loyal, Eric hissed. And now he's betrayed. That's different. She sipped her wine, calm on the outside. Then you fix it. I can't fix what's coming, he said. The journalist is legit. If she gets this out, we're done. My contracts, your real estate scam, Colton's transfers, gone. Heather's smile flickered. You've always had a plan. Eric leaned closer. And this time? My plan's to disappear. Heather blinked. What? I'm leaving the country, he said. Within a week. If you're smart, you'll do the same. Heather leaned back, face blank. I'm not running. Eric gave her a long look, then stood. Then you're already dead. He walked out. She sat alone, swirling wine she no longer wanted, while 2 tables away, a woman with dark glasses and a hidden mic sent everything to a hard drive. Camila had heard every word. Jack watched from the driveway as Heather fussed with the table settings inside. She was hosting a backyard wine night for her inner circle, the same neighbors and PDA friends who'd played blind when the affair was in full swing. Jack hadn't been invited. Heather had said it was just the girls. So naturally, Jack showed up with lemonade and charm. Oh. Heather flinched when she saw him. You're, home early. Jack smiled politely. Didn't want to miss the party. She tried to pull him aside, but the guests were already waving, calling out, excited to see the hero husband back in town. Jack mingled like a man with nothing to hide. He poured drinks, told light stories, played the perfect spouse. Heather's eye twitched every time he laughed with someone. Then he brought out his laptop. "Hey, everyone," he said cheerfully. "Before dessert, I've got something fun." Heather's been working on a documentary pitch about real estate, and I found one of her deleted demo reels. Heather stood instantly. "Jack, don't," he clicked play. The screen showed Heather and Eric, drunk, laughing, slurring details about a shell flip property scam while bragging about laundering $300,000 tax-free. Gasps hit the crowd. One woman spilled her wine. Heather lunged at the laptop, but Jack shut it just in time. "Oops," he said. "Wrong file." The room was ice. Heather's face drained. "You set me up." Jack leaned in, voice calm, eyes cold. "You handed me everything. I just pressed record." The guests left in a slow, stunned silence. Some avoided eye contact. Others whispered apologies. Jack stood at the door, watching them scatter. The show was over, but the storm was just beginning. The binder was full now. Every tab color-coded, every document annotated. Wire transfers. Shell company blueprints. Heather's signed approvals. Colton's emails. Eric's forged clearances. The whistleblower packet was airtight. Jack sat across from Camila in a hotel room with blackout curtains. She scrolled through the digital copies, jaw tightening. "This isn't just a story," she said. "This is conspiracy on a federal level. These signatures alone." "I know," Jack said, eyes on the skyline outside. "So make sure they can't silence it." Camila nodded. "I've got outlets lined up. One piece in The Guardian, another on Military Crimes Wire, and a live podcast drop in 72 hours. Jack turned back to her. "You sure you're protected?" Camila cracked a grin. "I don't mind getting sued. I mind being wrong. And this? This is clean." Jack handed over the final piece, a scanned photo of a notebook entry with Colton Ames's initials beside encrypted data logs. "This nails it," she whispered. "I want them all down," Jack said. "Not just embarrassed. Not fired. Finished." "You'll get it," she said. "When this hits, there's no putting it back." Jack walked out into the night, breathing in the cool air. He didn't feel joy, or rage, or even peace. He felt ready, like a missile waiting for launch clearance. Heather thought she was the smart one. Eric thought he'd disappear. Colton thought his power made him untouchable. They were all wrong, because Jack Reynolds wasn't just coming for revenge anymore. He was coming for justice, with the kind of precision that left nothing standing. 3 days after the wine night incident, the first crack in the system hit like a fault line splitting open. Eric's defense company, Vanguard Tactical Logistics, was hit with a surprise audit from the Department of Defense. It started with whispers, locked servers, missing reports, unfiled tax data. Then, someone leaked a letter to the press. Camila's voice narrated it that same night on a podcast heard by over 2 million listeners. Vanguard is under active investigation for fraudulent billing of non-existent transport contracts tied to overseas operations. Payments were processed using private real estate channels traced to an Air Force officer's spouse. Heather's name wasn't said, but it didn't need to be. Everyone on base connected the dots. Jack sat in his truck, listening to the podcast play through the speakers while the base traffic moved around him like nothing had changed. Call sat beside him, watching. "You think Mom knows yet?" he asked quietly. Jack didn't look at him. "She will." The next day, Heather didn't go to her yoga class. She didn't text, didn't call. By late afternoon, Jack came home to find her sitting in the kitchen, hair tied back, eyes puffy, a printed article on the table in front of her. "Is this your doing?" she asked, voice raw. Jack picked up the article, read the headline out loud. "Defense contractor under federal investigation for financial espionage ties." He folded it and set it down. Calm, controlled. "Funny thing about karma," he said. "It's never in a rush, but it always arrives." Heather slammed her hand on the table. "You had no right." Jack leaned in. "You gave me every right. When you used my name. When you used our house. Our son." Heather looked like she wanted to scream, but the words never came. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just falling apart. It was being torn down on purpose. Caleb's garage smelled like gasoline and failure. Tools scattered across the bench, a broken ATV engine in pieces, unpaid invoices pinned to the wall. It wasn't the life he portrayed at barbecues and base cookouts. Jack stood in the middle of the clutter, binder in hand. Caleb came down from the attic stairs, surprised. "Jack, didn't expect to see you." Jack held up the binder. "Still sure you were just in the middle?" Caleb sighed. "Look, man, I didn't sign up for whatever this became. I just needed help. Eric floated me alone. I didn't ask where it came from." Jack opened to a page marked Asset Transfers. There was Caleb's name, clear as daylight, tagged to a dummy LLC used to launder contractor payments. You knew it was dirty. Maybe not how dirty, but enough. Caleb's hands trembled. "If this goes public, I lose everything." Jack stepped closer. "You already did. You want revenge? Fine. But don't drag me into this war." Jack's tone turned lethal. "This was never just revenge. This was betrayal at scale. And you helped it breathe." Caleb turned away, pacing. "You're going to blow it all up, aren't you?" "No," Jack said. "I already did." Caleb looked up shocked. "What?" Jack pointed at a screen behind him. Caleb turned. His security cam feed showed Camila outside filming, recording, documenting. "You just gave her your side of the story," Jack said. "You should have picked a better one." Jack left without another word. Behind him, Caleb crumbled into the nearest chair. In that moment, it hit him. He was no longer just a bystander. He was a co-conspirator, and there was no one left to blame. Kyle found it by accident. He was searching an old drive labeled Family Videos, 2016, looking for footage of a birthday party to bury under layers of fake nostalgia on social media. Something to make it look like things were normal. Instead, he found a file named h_trip.mov. It was from 5 years ago. A grainy phone video. The camera wobbled as it recorded Heather and Eric in a hotel room. Heather held the phone. Eric was half-dressed, laughing, drink in hand. "Say it again," Heather whispered behind the lens. Eric winked. "You're my real home. Jack's a good soldier, but this is real." They both laughed. Kyle hit pause. He didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. The rage didn't come in screams, it came in silence. He walked out to the garage where Jack was organizing files. "I found something," Kyle said, voice low. Jack looked at his son's face. No fear, just focus. They watched the tape together. When it ended, Jack simply nodded. "This goes in the final drop." Kyle looked down. "It's been going on since I was 12. Jack didn't speak. Then Kyle added, voice trembling, "They used your deployments to build something fake. And I lived in it." Jack reached out, gripped Kyle's shoulder tight. "Not anymore." Later that night, they burned 3 copies to encrypted USBs. One for Camila, one for the federal archive they were building, one to be buried in a lockbox under the floorboards of their garage. Kyle asked why. Jack replied, "Because someday, when the dust settles, someone's going to ask how the truth survived. And we'll show them." It was Kyle who noticed first. He'd been tracking Eric's movements through a private GPS tag hidden in an old golf bag, one he borrowed from their garage for a weekend trip months ago. On Friday, the dot on the map vanished near a coastal stretch in Oregon. No motion, no signal, no ping in over 36 hours. "He's off-grid," Kyle told Jack. Deliberately. Jack stared at the blinking cursor on the screen. He ran. Heather noticed too. That night, she paced the living room like a caged animal. Her phone rang nonstop, unknown numbers, dead air, no voicemails. She was unraveling. Jack watched from the hallway. Silent. At dinner, she finally snapped. "Where the hell is he, Jack?" He didn't look up from his plate. "I thought you were just business partners." Heather slammed her glass down, red wine sloshing across the tablecloth. "Don't play games with me. You think you're smarter than all of us? You have no idea what you've started." Jack leaned forward, fork in hand. "I didn't start this. I just stopped pretending I didn't see it." Heather's face flushed with panic. For the first time, the confidence cracked, and behind it, fear. That night, she tore through her files, her laptop, her burner phones. She deleted accounts, burned papers in the backyard. Jack stood at the upstairs window, arms crossed, watching smoke curl into the sky. "Burn all you want," he said under his breath. "It's already over." Monday morning. Camila Park's podcast dropped at 6 a.m. sharp. By 7:30, it had 100,000 downloads. By noon, it hit 1 million. Jack listened to it alone in the garage, the voice of his enemy now echoing through Bluetooth speakers. You're my real home. Jack's a good soldier. But this is real. The episode was titled, Wife, Friend, Federal Crime. Clips from the video ran alongside evidence, company shell records, bank transfers, even Heather's voice and coded messages to Colton names. She was cooked. But it wasn't just her. The podcast dropped names, Colton, Eric, Caleb. Not accusations, proof. The episode ended with a voice clip from Jack himself, recorded weeks prior. This wasn't about hurting me. This was about erasing me. They tried to delete a man they thought would never come home. The impact was instant. Military forums exploded. Local news picked it up. One outlet ran a headline. Cheating wife or covert operative. Shocking scandal exposes ties between infidelity and intel breaches. Jack's phone buzzed endlessly. Camila texted. It's working. They're crawling now. By nightfall, Jack sat at the kitchen table, binder closed. Heather never came home. She was gone. But she hadn't run like Eric. She was summoned. FBI agents showed up at the doorstep at 10:42 p.m., suits dark, voices low. We need to speak with your wife. Jack opened the door wide. She's all yours. The next morning, Kyle stood by the front door, backpack slung over one shoulder, watching Heather from across the room. She looked hollow, eyes bloodshot, hair a mess, skin pale like all her color had drained out. She moved like she hadn't slept, because she hadn't. Kyle didn't speak until she turned to leave the room. I know everything. She froze. What? Kyle stepped forward, pulling a small flash drive from his coat pocket. The calls, the emails, the hotel videos, even the time you signed your name to shell documents under my name. Heather's mouth opened slightly. No sound came out. You didn't just cheat, he said. You tried to erase Dad. And you almost erased me too. She stepped forward, voice breaking. Kyle, I don't, he cut in. You don't get to cry now. The silence that followed was louder than any screaming match could have been. Heather dropped her keys on the table. You told him everything? Kyle nodded. No, he said. He found most of it on his own. I just stopped protecting you. Tears welled in her eyes, but Kyle didn't move. The worst part, he said quietly. You thought no one would love him enough to fight for him. Heather's knees buckled, and she dropped onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. But Kyle was already gone. Down the steps, into the car. Jack was in the driver's seat, engine idling. Ready? Jack asked. Kyle nodded. As they drove off, Jack didn't look in the rearview mirror. He didn't need to. What they left behind wasn't a wife or a mother. It was a ghost of a woman who bet against her own family and lost. Heather hadn't spoken since the FBI left the house with 2 phones, a laptop, and a list of her offshore contacts. She sat at the dining table in her robe, fingers clenched around a half-empty cup of cold tea. Kyle stepped inside from school, dropped his bag quietly, and just looked at her. She didn't meet his eyes. Kyle, she whispered, voice hoarse. Please, sit with me. Let me explain. He didn't move. Heather stood, walked slowly toward him. I made mistakes. I was scared. I got pulled into something I didn't know how to escape from. Kyle laughed bitterly. You had a way out. It was called telling the truth. Her voice cracked. I didn't want to lose everything. He stepped forward, eyes burning. You did. Heather's face crumpled. Kyle didn't flinch. You don't deserve to be anyone's mother. She broke then, collapsed into the nearest chair, sobbing into her hands like grief could buy her redemption. But Kyle didn't comfort her. He just walked past. Jack stood outside by the truck, waiting. As Kyle climbed in, he whispered under his breath, She's already gone. Jack nodded once. They drove away in silence, father and son, side by side, not just survivors now, but fighters with nothing left to lose. Briggs called just after midnight. His voice was flat, controlled, but Jack could hear the tension underneath. You need to come in. Right now. Jack left the house without a word. Kyle didn't ask. At the undisclosed base near the desert, Briggs met him with a sealed manila folder. You were right, Briggs said. This wasn't just fraud or infidelity. You were part of something they called Operation Stingray. Jack opened the folder slowly. Inside were black and white satellite images, lists of targets, airstrike maps from missions Jack had flown, but never debriefed. Briggs continued. They used your deployment routes as a smokescreen. Intelligence was piggybacked through encrypted traffic you carried unknowingly. Jack's chest tightened. How, he asked. Your wife had access. She was connected to Colton Ames and a procurement cell that was leaking intel through backdoor vendor contracts. Jack stared at the images. Red marks on buildings he remembered. Civilian targets. Non-cleared zones. You're telling me I flew cover for a black market op? Briggs nodded grimly. Jack closed the folder. This isn't just a family betrayal, he said. This is treason. And the worst part, Briggs added, they're still cleaning house. 2 agents already dead in accidents. We don't think Heather was working alone anymore. Jack's jaw clenched. He had dug to destroy a marriage. But now he was standing at the edge of a covert battlefield. And his name was all over it. Camila met Jack in a remote cabin in the mountains. No cell signal. No Wi-Fi. Just a fire and 4 files laid out across a wooden table. She spoke low, urgent. This is bigger than either of us thought. Colton Ames is not just a rogue officer. He's tied to a privatized intel broker operating overseas. They've been flipping defense assets for profit. Heather was a mule. Eric was the bridge. Jack's fingers hovered over the files. One had Heather's name on the cover. She knew, he said quietly. She used me. My missions. Camila nodded. And she's not talking. She's trying to negotiate immunity. Jack's hands curled into fists. No, she's naming others, Camila said. But she's spinning herself as a victim. Claiming coercion, threats, fear. Jack shook his head. She was never afraid. She was greedy. Camila slid over the last folder. Inside were printed transcripts from calls intercepted 2 years ago. Heather. Colton. Eric. He's gone 6 months this time, Heather said on the line. That gives us room to push 3 more routes. If we ghost him right, Colton added, we can make it look like a rogue asset leak. Blame the foreign end. Jack closed the file. Camila's eyes were locked on him. What are you going to do? He looked at her, voice steady as steel. No deals. No immunity. I want them all exposed. Not just ruined, convicted. Camila sat back slowly. You're going to war with people who erase lives, Jack. Jack stood. Good. Let them try to erase mine. It started with one headline. Then it multiplied like fire. Military wife at center of federal espionage case linked to defense contractor, Air Force whistleblower sparks Pentagon scandal, intelligence leaks hidden behind marriage and money. Inside the fallout, Jack sat in the back booth of a diner off Route 6. Phone on the table. Coffee untouched. Kyle across from him, scanning article after article, his jaw tightening. Mom's photo is everywhere, Kyle muttered. Jack looked at the screen. It was a freeze frame from her charity gala last year. Dressed in blue, diamond smile, hand on Eric's shoulder. Now it was tagged, federal suspect. She tried to be untouchable, Jack said. Now she's unavoidable. Across the room, an older man at the bar glanced at Jack, then back at his phone. It had begun. Camila texted, DOJ officially launched criminal inquiry. You're vindicated. Keep your head down. Jack didn't reply. He just turned his phone face down. His war wasn't about being right. It was about being heard. Outside, TV vans were parking along suburban curbs. Reporters knocked on doors. Old neighbors whispered behind blinds. By nightfall, Heather's former social circle had gone silent. Group chats? Gone. Friend requests? Canceled. Her phone? Disconnected. Kyle looked out the window and asked quietly, You think she's scared now? Jack didn't answer, but he knew fear wouldn't even begin to describe it. It wasn't planned. Not really. Camila reached out, said a podcast was doing a follow-up piece on family fallout from intelligence leaks. They wanted an emotional voice. Not a soldier. Not a reporter. Someone in between. Kyle agreed. The studio was dim, the host gentle, the mic read with silence until Kyle finally spoke. People think the worst part was the cheating. It wasn't. The host leaned in. Then what was? Kyle exhaled slowly. It was feeling like my mom didn't even see us as real. Like we were props in a life she staged for gain. My dad was deployed, risking his life, and she was selling access to people who couldn't care less if we lived or died. Silence. Then, she used our name like a key, and when things got messy, she planned to disappear. Leave us buried with the consequences. The interviewer cleared his throat. Why are you speaking now? Kyle didn't blink. Because someone needs to know what this does to a kid. What betrayal looks like when it's not just emotional, it's national. I want people to remember her face when they say the word trust. The episode aired the next day. It went viral. Thousands of comments poured in. That kid's strength is insane. This broke me. Imagine your mom choosing espionage over family. Let this boy be the voice that warns others. Jack watched the whole thing, sitting in silence in the dark. When it ended, he reached over and squeezed Kyle's shoulder. You just exposed her in a way evidence never could. Kyle didn't speak, but his eyes said everything. They didn't hold a memorial. Not in the way people expected. Jack took Kyle to the edge of the desert, where the wind was sharp and the ground was dry as bone. No gravestone. No audience. Just a small metal lockbox and a shovel. Inside the box, the original second phone, USB copies of the Stingray documents, and a note handwritten by Kyle. To the people who thought truth could be buried, this is where it waits. They dug in silence. Jack placed the box inside, pressed it down gently. Kyle poured the dirt back over it. No crosses. No markers. Just sand and sky. When it was done, Jack stood back and stared at the spot. This is the only funeral they'll get from us, he said. The people they pretended to be. The family they lied about. Kyle stood beside him, arms folded. Good riddance. They left in silence, dust trailing behind them. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure, not just for them, but for every part of themselves that had been buried under lies and was now, finally, free. The Cayman Islands were beautiful from above, white sand, teal water, peaceful. But from the inside of a wire fraud investigation unit, they were just another hiding place for people with too much to lose. Camila sat in a legal office in Grand Cayman, flipping through the frozen accounts linked to Eric Vance. Her contact, a local banker turned whistleblower, handed her a stack of scanned statements. All of this was flagged last week, he said. Account closures, rushed wire transfers to South Korea and Prague. One flagged under her name too, Heather Reynolds. Camila scanned through the entries. There it was, a $600,000 transfer labeled as a consulting exit fee, processed 2 days before Eric vanished. He planned his exit perfectly, she muttered. The banker shook his head. He was close, but he got cocky. Camila leaned forward. What do you mean? The banker tapped one line on the statement. Transfer attempt rejected. He used a flagged channel tied to a NATO security fund. That triggered a red-level response, which means Camila cut in. The feds are watching every account tied to him now. He nodded. And if he surfaces, even for a second, they'll be waiting. She gathered the files, ice cold. Good. He doesn't get to vanish quietly. Back in the States, Jack received the encrypted documents from her that night. He sat at the kitchen table, reading through the financial skeleton of Eric's empire. Offshore accounts. Front companies. Silent partners. He turned to Kyle. He tried to disappear. Kyle leaned in. Then let's make sure the world never stops looking. Whispers had turned to calls. Then the calls turned to quiet closed-door meetings. 2 colonels and 1 base commander were now under internal review. Jack didn't gloat. He just showed up to work, clocked in, and sat in front of the same command desk where he'd once been sent off to war while others exploited his absence. Colonel Mercer, once a polished figure of command, looked different now, slumped posture, tie loosened, a file in his hands that shook slightly when he passed it over. We're conducting a full compliance audit, Mercer said. Your name's clear. But some lines were crossed under your deployments. Lines we weren't aware of at the time. Jack took the file. You're aware now. Mercer didn't argue. He looked down. You were compromised by someone close to you. The system failed. Jack leaned in slowly. No. The system was the accomplice. Silence stretched between them. Then Mercer said something Jack didn't expect. We're recommending you for a civilian ethics advisory panel. Quiet role. But you'll have access. Jack raised an eyebrow. Why? Because you're the only one in the room who didn't lie when it mattered. Jack stood without taking the offer. I didn't come for a promotion. I came to make sure people remember what happens when silence becomes strategy. He left the office as calm as he'd entered. But behind him, 3 officers sat still, the weight of exposure finally settling on their shoulders. The courtroom was colder than expected. Heather sat between 2 defense attorneys, dressed in gray, her makeup too clean, too deliberate, as if trying to cover up damage that couldn't be hidden. Jack sat in the gallery, Kyle beside him. No emotion, just quiet observation. The prosecutor spoke first. Heather Reynolds acted knowingly as an intermediary in the unlawful distribution of classified information. In exchange for her cooperation identifying higher-level actors, we are offering a plea deal. Jack leaned forward slightly. Heather's voice trembled when she spoke. I wasn't the mastermind. I was scared. They said Jack wouldn't return. They told me I was disposable if I didn't cooperate. Kyle whispered, without turning his head, she's lying. The judge reviewed the documents, tapping a pen thoughtfully. You've named your co-conspirators, submitted digital records. But this court doesn't deal in pity. We deal in accountability. Heather stared at the floor. The judge continued. You'll serve 7 years in a federal correctional facility with limited eligibility for early release. You will surrender all assets, and you will testify in open court against Eric Vance and Colton Ames. Heather blinked rapidly, holding back tears. Yes, Your Honor. Jack stood and walked out before sentencing ended. Kyle followed. Outside, the wind cut through them, sharp as glass. 7 years, Kyle muttered. That's all she gets? Jack looked straight ahead. She's not getting 7 years, he said. She's getting a lifetime of silence. That's worse. It arrived 2 weeks after the hearing. Plain envelope. No return address. Just his name. Kyle opened it slowly, hands steady, knowing who it was from before he even unfolded the paper. It was from Heather. The writing was clean, neat, his mother's handwriting. I know you may never forgive me. I don't deserve it. I watched you grow and still let myself become someone you'd have to recover from. You were the only thing that felt real while I was lying to everyone else. If there's any part of you that still sees me as a mother, please remember the good years, not the worst ones. Kyle read it twice. Then he walked into the backyard, struck a match, and held the flame to the edge of the paper. He watched it curl and blacken, the handwriting vanishing line by line. Jack stood on the porch behind him, watching quietly. Kyle didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He let the ashes fall into the wind and turned away. The letter was gone, and with it, the last thing tethering them to a life built on a lie. The house was almost empty now. Rooms stripped bare. Photos gone. Closets hollowed out like the past had been vacuumed out. All that remained were echoes, memories stitched into drywall and dust. Jack stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty countertop where Heather once arranged her wine bottles, laughing into the phone like nothing was wrong. Kyle was upstairs, boxing the last of his childhood books. It didn't feel like moving out. It felt like leaving a graveyard. Jack picked up the small key from the counter, the lockbox key, the one they had buried in the desert. He slid it into his pocket, just in case. The walls felt colder now, like even the paint didn't want to stay. Kyle came down with the last box, set it by the door, and looked around. Doesn't even feel like it was ever home. Jack nodded. It wasn't. Not really. Just a well-decorated lie. They walked out together. Before Jack locked the door, he pulled a small card from his jacket and placed it on the entry table. It read, "Rot in the ashes." He closed the door without looking back. The silence that followed was not emptiness. It was freedom. The story wasn't supposed to be about Caleb, but guilt has a way of making cowards speak up. He sat in front of a live-stream camera, face pale, jaw tight, a glass of untouched water by his laptop. "My name is Caleb Hart," he began, voice shaking. "And I was part of a cover-up I didn't fully understand. But I did help it. And now I need to talk." It wasn't scripted. It wasn't clean. But it was raw. Real. He walked viewers through how he'd taken loans from Eric. How Heather passed off illegal deals as personal arrangements. How Colton Ames had visited his garage once, casually dropping a manila folder and saying, Just say it came from a contractor if anyone asks. Caleb's live confession caught fire. Within 2 hours, military Reddit threads had clipped it. TikTok had reaction videos. By midnight, the media was calling it the quiet betrayal. Jack watched the stream from a friend's place. He didn't smile, but he did mutter under his breath, "You're late to the truth." But not useless. By morning, federal investigators had reopened threads tied to Caleb's statement. The noose around the corruption circle was tightening, and they were running out of places to hide. Jack wasn't the type to go public. But there are moments when silence turns into complicity. He typed the post late one night, simple, direct. Posted it anonymously to a veteran forum that had been quietly tracking the scandal since Camila's first podcast. Title: How Loyalty Can Kill You Body. They counted on me being too loyal to ask questions. Too proud to suspect my own family. Too disciplined to speak up. They were right, for a while. But the moment I stopped protecting people who didn't deserve it, everything changed. Betrayal doesn't come in gunfire. It comes in paperwork. In trust used like a weapon. If you're reading this, and you've ever felt something was wrong, chase it. Loyalty is earned, not inherited. And if someone's building a kingdom behind your back, burn the foundation. GR. The post went viral in hours. It became a rally cry for service members who had been manipulated, gaslit, used. Jack didn't comment, didn't add updates. He let the words stand. Some truths don't need a voice, they need a mirror. Jack's military contact, Major Elliot Shaw, was a quiet man, razor-sharp, and allergic to attention. But when Jack dropped a file on his desk marked Colton Ames, classified routing manipulation, Elliot leaned back in his chair and read every word. "Where'd you get this?" he asked, eyes narrowing. "Off the back of my name," Jack replied. "They used my security clearance as a shield." Elliot's jaw tightened. This isn't just corruption. This is deep channel security compromise. We're talking congressional hearings. Jack folded his arms. "Good. Let the system eat itself." Elliot nodded slowly. "I'll walk this to internal counsel. No emails. No paper trail." He stood, walked around his desk, handed Jack a small envelope. "For what it's worth, you kept your integrity. Most men in your position would have snapped." Jack didn't take the compliment. He just took the envelope and left. Later, in the parking lot, Jack opened it. It was a letter, official, clean. Request for testimony, federal hearing. Location, Washington, D.C. Subject, security breach, Operation Stingray. Jack folded it neatly. The storm wasn't over. But now, he was the one standing in the eye of it. It started with one press release, then 5. Then a ripple turned into a landslide. Department of Defense cancels $230 million in contractor deals following internal breach probe. Vanguard Tactical, Ames Holdings under federal review. Confirmed. Over 19 contracts tied to Operation Stingray are officially suspended. Jack sat in a small coffee shop near the base, watching headlines roll across 3 different screens. Every single one carried a name or company he'd circled and read months ago. He wasn't smiling. He was studying the fallout, his war map catching fire in real time. A quiet voice startled him. "You did it." Camila stood beside his table, coffee in hand, eyes sharper than ever. "No," Jack said. "We did it." She slid him a flash drive. Unpublished footage. Heather and Colton pre-plea. "You'll want to see it?" Jack plugged it into his laptop. A hotel room. A grainy recording. Heather pacing. Colton drinking from a flask. "If this blows, I burn first," Colton snapped. "You better stick to the script." "I will," Heather replied, cold. "But if I go down, I'm naming every name I ever heard, including yours." Jack paused the footage. "She's still playing every angle," he muttered. Camila leaned in. "Not anymore. She testifies next week. No more spins. Just the stand, and you." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Good. Let her finally face me, where she can't lie." Federal court. D.C. Heather stood at the witness stand, under oath, under lights, under pressure. She wore black. No jewelry, no smile. Her voice was low, rehearsed. "I was manipulated," she said. "They promised safety, freedom, a future. I thought I was protecting my son. I was wrong. Across the room, Jack watched her. Not with anger. With silence. Heather continued. Eric Vance handled the logistics. I signed forms under pressure. Colton Ames controlled the routing. Jack, he never knew. He was collateral. A senator leaned forward. Did you ever try to stop it? Heather hesitated. Then, no. Kyle watched from the side row, jaw tight. Heather added, I didn't think it would go this far. I was selfish. I betrayed the one person who would have died for me. Jack didn't blink. Later, in the hallway, she approached him slowly. I didn't expect you to be here. Jack's voice was cold steel. I promised I'd see it through. She looked at him, searching for something pity, pain, maybe a trace of what used to be. But Jack had none of it left. You wanted a clean story, he said. This is your ending. Own it. He walked away. And Heather was left standing, finally exposed, finally powerless, finally alone. 2 days later, Jack received a message. Heather requested a final meeting. He didn't owe her anything. But closure wasn't about her. It was about ending what she started. They met in the visitor's room at the federal holding facility. No glass between them. Just distance. Heather looked smaller now. Like the walls had stripped her clean. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. But I need you to know. I still loved you. Even when I lost myself. Jack leaned forward. You didn't lose yourself. You sold yourself. She swallowed hard. I know. Silence. I never planned to destroy you, she whispered. Jack stared at her. You didn't. You exposed me to who you really were. And I rebuilt everything from there. Tears fell, quiet and steady. He stood to leave. This is the last time we speak, he said. She nodded, almost grateful. As Jack turned away, she whispered, Is Kyle okay? He paused. Just once. He's everything you'll never be again. Then he walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. And Heather Reynolds stayed behind. Just another name in a list of people who gambled loyalty for greed and lost it all. Weeks passed. The media firestorm cooled. Headlines turned elsewhere. But the impact remained. Jack returned to base for the final time, not to fight, but to hand in his uniform. It wasn't a grand ceremony. No medals. No salutes. Just quiet nods from people who now saw him not just as a pilot, but as a man who had burned corruption to the ground and walked away with his soul intact. He walked the halls where he once heard whispers. No? Just respect. Kyle waited in the car outside. A small duffel bag in the back seat. College brochures in the glove box. Ready? He asked as Jack slid in. Jack looked one last time at the runway. Yeah, I finally landed. As they pulled out, the gate guards nodded. And for the first time in years, Jack Reynolds left base not as a soldier of war, but as a survivor of betrayal. And a man who turned revenge into legacy. The old house had already been sold. A young couple had bought it online, unaware of the history layered beneath the hardwood floors and behind freshly painted walls. Jack stood on the sidewalk one last time, arms crossed. The real estate agent had left the front door open. He didn't step inside. He didn't need to. Memories hung in the air like ghosts, Heather laughing in the kitchen, Kyle learning to ride a bike on the driveway, birthday candles blown out in a dining room that never told the truth. Kyle stepped beside him, holding a brown envelope. Should we? He asked. Jack nodded. Together, they walked around the side, past the garden Heather never kept, to a small stone pit where Jack used to burn dead brush. Kyle opened the envelope. Inside, a printout of Heather and Colton's leaked transcript, Eric's arrest photo, a copy of the plea deal, and a page from the war map. The first one. The beginning. They tossed them in. Jack lit the match. The paper caught instantly, curling, blackening, vanishing. Kyle watched the flames rise. You ever think we could have saved it? Any of it? Jack's voice was low, even. No, because we were never the ones breaking it. They stood there until the last ember dimmed. Then they turned and walked away. They didn't just leave a house behind. They buried the version of themselves that tolerated silence. It wasn't supposed to be emotional. Just a stage. A handshake. A cap toss. But when Kyle's name echoed through the gymnasium and he stepped forward in his robe, something shifted. Jack stood in the back. Not near the cameras. Not in the crowd. Just watching. Kyle's walk across the stage was steady, proud. He wore a pin on his sash, a small silver eagle. Not military issued. Custom. It read, "Truth wins." He received his diploma. He didn't look to the ceiling or the crowd. He looked straight at the exit. Jack met him outside, past the lines of hugging families and selfies. Kyle pulled off the gown. "They offered to let me give a speech," he said. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Why didn't you?" Kyle shrugged. "Didn't need to say anything. I lived it." Jack nodded, then handed him a letter, envelope sealed. Kyle opened it. Inside, a handwritten recommendation, addressed to the Cyber Defense Division, Washington, D.C. Kyle looked up, stunned. "You serious?" Jack smiled. "They owe me. I told them if they want to fix the system, they'd better start with someone who actually lived through its worst." Kyle folded the letter, swallowed hard, and said, "I won't waste it." "You never have," Jack replied. They didn't celebrate with streamers or confetti. They drove home in silence. But the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full of what's next. The orders weren't military this time. They came in a clean envelope. Government seal. No drama. Jack Reynolds, advisor, National Ethics and Oversight Panel, Intelligence Division. A quiet role. Minimal exposure. No cameras. Just the chance to oversee, audit, and flag behavior before it turned into betrayal. He accepted without hesitation. The office was small glass walls, 2 rooms, 1 window that looked out over a city that had once buried his name under silence. Now, he was the one turning on the lights. The job wasn't glamorous. Paperwork. Internal hearings. The occasional closed-door session with young agents and command officers. But it was exactly what he wanted: control, oversight, prevention. One afternoon, a junior analyst asked him, "How did you end up here?" Jack didn't look up from the file in his hands. "Someone underestimated how far I'd go for the truth." Later that night, he sat on the balcony of his new apartment. Nothing fancy, just clean air and peace. Kyle texted a photo from D.C. orientation, a selfie with his new team. Jack smiled for the first time that day, not because it was over, but because it didn't beat them. And that was the revenge he never planned, but always needed. The cover was matte black. No author photo. No flashy blurbs. Just 4 words in gold foil across the front. He came home early. Jack never meant to write a book, but the publisher insisted. Camila helped ghost the first chapters. Kyle proofread every draft like it was classified intel. The story wasn't just about Heather, or Eric, or the sting operations and betrayal. It was about what betrayal steals and what fighting back gives back. When the book dropped, it didn't explode. It built. Veterans forums shared it. Book clubs picked it up. Podcasts reviewed it. Survivors of betrayal, military, civilian, relational, quoted passages. They didn't just underestimate me. They mistook my silence for surrender. Jack did one interview. Just one. He was asked, "What do you hope readers feel when they finish your book?" He paused, then said, "I don't want them to feel anger. I want them to feel armed." The interviewer leaned forward. "Armed with what?" Jack met her eyes. "The truth." Eric Vance was found in Berlin under an alias, arrested in a cafe with a fake passport and encrypted flash drives sewn into the lining of his coat. He was tried privately, convicted publicly. Colton Ames didn't show for his hearing. He was found 3 days later in a safe house bunker outside Vegas, 2 steps ahead of a bullet, but 1 step behind Jack's truth. Both men were now names etched into federal case logs. Heather? She was moved to a minimum security facility in Nebraska. Taught GED classes. Quiet. Forgotten. Until one letter slipped into Jack's mailbox. No return address. Just a single sentence on the paper inside. "You were always more than I deserved. I just didn't see it until you left the room." Jack didn't reply. Some words don't earn answers. He folded it in half and tucked it into a drawer, not for forgiveness, but for remembrance. Because this story wasn't just about revenge. It was about never becoming the thing that broke you. 1 year later, Jack stood on a hiking trail in Colorado with Kyle beside him, both dressed light, breathing in cold mountain air. No noise. No phones. No guilt. Just sky. "Funny," Kyle said. "After everything, this is how it ends?" Jack looked out over the ridge, sunlight kissing the cliffs. "This isn't the end," he said. "It's just the part where we stop surviving and start living." Cal nodded, tossing a rock off the cliffside. "Think she ever understood what she destroyed?" Jack shook his head. "Doesn't matter anymore. We didn't let it destroy us." They sat down on the ledge, legs dangling over the edge of peace they earned inch by inch. As the wind picked up, Jack looked at his son and asked, "If silence can shatter a family, then what do you think truth can rebuild?" That's a question we'll leave to you, the viewers, the survivors, the ones who've been through something and still showed up for more. Where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one. If this story hit you somewhere real, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's still silent, but maybe not for long. We'll see you soon in the next epic, emotional, no-mercy revenge thriller. Until then, stay sharp, stay brave, and take care of your truth. The end.